Out already.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Hot Topics, the podcast, the show where we'll create, inspire, and
transform.
There you go. My name is Gloria Goldberg, the founder of the podcast Unbreakable Life with Gloria, where I talk about depression, anxiety, and PTSD in a holistic way and natural way to always make you feel better. And next to me, I have my beautiful co-host, Kia Baker.
Hi, everybody. Well, if you don't know me by now, my name is Kia Baker, and I am the creator and host of the Female Veterans Podcast, Women Warrior Stories for the Veterans Channel, and success coach at London Real Academy. And I am so excited and proud of Brian Rose for running for Mayor of London. And he's doing a great job.
I love his Instagram, the way he's sitting down in the bus stop, like in the bus, and like in the back, and all his life every morning. I think he give a live every morning and talk about stuff.
Of course he does. You can see all of that stuff on YouTube. I caught his live on Saturday from the bus. It was pretty amazing. I checked it for a little bit, but it looked like a lot of good support in the feed, right? So
yeah,
he's doing pretty well, and we'll see what happens. I mean, I know the BBC doesn't like him very much. He did get arrested the other week, but So I saw the picture of that with him standing in his posh suit and his umbrella and 10 cops surrounding him. And it was just so incredible. The video is even better. It's on YouTube if you haven't seen it. Just go to on YouTube and you can see it there. And so, even when something bad happens to him, it's good. And you know what we say at London Real Academy, when something bad happens to you, good, right? Shout
good.
Out to Jocko Willing for that.
Yes. So Kia, my love, you have a beautiful shirt. I love that. That green, is it green with gold?
Yes, it is.
It's beautiful. It's like a teal, right? A teal color?
Yeah, it's green. You told me to wear more green.
Yeah, that's beautiful. It looks beautiful on you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I think that your hair looks incredible today.
Thank you, my dear. I'm in the process to leave this hair like that because I'm just get tired to, straighten my hair and not recognizing my nature. And you know what, Kia? Sometimes it's good to change, you know that. But right now, in the moment of my life, I just want to be free. And one of the things for me to be free is also with the hair because we have so much, I would say, gels that we get into that habit. And myself want to be free. So a lot of women is in different state of life. But me, I don't know. I got into that I want to be free everywhere.
Oh my gosh, I feel you. Well, here in the United States anyway, we take our freedoms very seriously.
Yes.
So we love to feel free, and I absolutely do too. I feel very free these days as some of the restrictions are easing up in my area. How about you?
In my area, we've never been restrictions, only to use face mask and wash your hands and social distancing. But when you go out, you don't see that. And then even in the places that the government have for people to do the line to get tested, they don't have a social distancing. I was on Monday, I was with my mother because she have to travel and she needs to have the PCR I guess the permit to travel to my country to go back so she don't have COVID. We went there and yes, we did the line 6 feet apart, but when you get there, the people who's working there, they're not even 6 feet apart. So I was saying what is this? And also the person who's telling us to go in line, she was not using gloves. She was only using face mask and she was not also doing it 6 feet apart. So I was like confused. And I also, just like an hour ago, I went to the mall close to me, and I saw a huge line of old people, and it said COVID vaccinations. And I said, I can't believe. And it was all old people. And I said, I can't believe. And no one social distancing, one behind another one. So sometimes I get confused. For real, I'm always confused whether the situation are. I know COVID exists because in my family is already 3 people, but I get confused to follow what.
Yeah. Actually, just the other day on Monday, I watched an excellent interview on Instagram Live with Dr. Larry Brilliant. Hello, friend.
Hi, friend, my dear.
And Dr. Larry Brilliant, and he worked with the vaccine for smallpox and helped eradicating that disease.
Right.
Through vaccination. And so he gave a talk on Monday with my Hollywood husband, Seth MacFarlane. And you can see that on his Instagram live TV, but they did an hour-long talk about COVID and safe practices, and actually dispelled some myths about the vaccine and who should take them and why, and which one to take, I should say, because there's different ones. And why it's important to take it and all of that stuff in order to curb the virus. And, it's very, very informative. And it helped me to understand how important social distancing is. And
it's
so
important.
It is so important, but also like going to restaurants and being what kind of restaurants to go to are safe and what kind aren't. And like, even though, for example, if you're in an outdoor restaurant, but it is covered by, those plastic walls and everything, and it's sort of encased, that's really an inside restaurant, even though the walls are clear and you can. So the idea is to be 6 feet apart. The idea is to be outside, so you can go outside as long as you're, away from other people. You could even be out there without a mask, actually.
And also, I want to say this because I also, when I listened to this, I was watching a video the other day about COVID, and this what I hear make me understand very clear why we need to use the face mask is because there's three ways for you to contagious: your hands, right? Mm-hmm. And your palates of when you talk or when you sneeze, your palates, that name is aerosol palates, aerosol. So when you talk, you blow aerosol. So those things can be in the air and can transmute to other people. And that's why we put like the face mask. Is because the palates of the saliva that we can create. So there's a lot of people that they have the virus, but they don't know. But with that, it's like when they talk, it could be more like contagion on other people. So that's why the face mask is important to put on, especially when you go to public areas that you're going to encounter a lot of people that you don't know where those people went, you don't know where that people was. So it's important to be aware of that. I'm not saying that you need to be like in fear, but now we need to be serious about it, that yes, this is for real.
I mean, seriously. And I think I had I always took it seriously. You know that. If you watch Hot Topics,
yes.
You know that we took it we were pretty serious in the beginning.
Yes.
Super serious. You remember? We'd be like, have everyone take off their clothes at the front door.
Oh, God.
And you had to go straight to a shower and wash your clothes. Like, we were like serious, okay?
Right.
And over time, we sort of relaxed a little bit, but you still have to be cautious. I know when my best friend's father died, who I had just absolutely adored, very suddenly, within 10 days, and it just really threw me for a loop. Right? It was very emotional for me, and I'm still like in mourning from that. And to be honest with you, I have never taken it more seriously. Like, I mean, they say when it personally affects you, that's when you really get it. And it's
Yes.
true. Like I understood, but it really became a powerful thing when we experienced it in our sort of family. And no face masks in Sweden.
But I think over there you guys have it controlled from the beginning. I think you guys don't have a problem.
There's a few places that are good. I think Taiwan. I think they said Korea maybe had it like hundreds of days without any. So I mean, hi Tendai, sweetheart. That's right. I mean, 6 feet apart with masks. And you know what I found out actually the other day from Dr. Larry Brilliant was two face masks, right?
Oh, I saw that too.
Are better than one. So I actually have this face mask, and it has like 2 layers in it. So it has the weaving on the outside of the mask. It crisscrosses, right? So it creates a better coverage. And then there's another mask inside that mask. So when I saw the 2 face masks, I thought, wow, that's wise because, okay, so I'm gonna liken it to when I cook pork chops. So bear with me because I promise this has a point. All right, so when I fry pork chops, right, I have this little metal mesh covering that I put over the top to catch all the oil. Otherwise, my kitchen is a greasy mess. Okay, and then my husband likes his pork chops, so this is how I cook them all the time for him, right? At least once a week. It's messy. So I felt like I was still getting a lot of oil everywhere. So I decided to take another one and cross it the other way over the opening. And it took 3 before I kept the oil from going all over my kitchen. This is the same concept with the face mask and wearing more than one. It's to keep the saliva spray mist. If it makes it through one layer, the second layer will catch it and keep you from either receiving or infecting another person. Because I could see how it'd be easy to be like, I don't even want to wear one mask. Now I have to wear 2. Well, my mask already came with 2 to begin with. And
mine too.
And I think it's important to share that, you know, those little thin doctor's ones and like a bandana mask, that's one of the things they talked about, are not as efficient, you know. And also something I didn't know was that the virus is active for 4 days.
Yes, but right? It depends the way it is.
Someone where you can you're contagious, I should say.
Right,
so
right.
You're contagious for 4 days, and if you come into contact with it within those 4 days from someone who's in their contagious phase, then that's how you can become infected. Just so you know.
That's awesome. Mm-hmm. Well, it's awesome to know.
It's awesome to know, right? But if you want to learn more about that, you can just check out Dr. Larry Brilliant and the conversation he has with Seth MacFarlane on Seth's YouTube or Instagram page, actually. It's on his IGTV.
Okay. So, it's been very good. They went for herd immunity from the beginning.
That's what you need. And that's what you need. And good tracing. So if you trace it early and you get the whole ring of people who have come into contact with someone who's been infected, then you can control it a little bit better. But unfortunately, we didn't do that here in the United States. And now I don't know if you all know this, but we're going to surpass the amount of people who were killed in World War II.
Yes.
From coronavirus. We're going to surpass that number.
Imagine that.
I mean, I can hardly even imagine it.
But also, Kia, we are more people in the world.
Yes. Well, I'm talking about here just in the United States.
Imagine that statistic.
Yeah. So it's something to think about anyway, you know.
Yeah, of course. So I want to talk to you about something that I know that is very important for me and maybe for a lot of people to be better. What do you think if we talk about the 4 agreements?
The 4 agreements, it's funny, that my ex-husband, when we were sort of towards the end of our relationship, he read that book. And it really had such a positive impact on his life that I read into it as well. And so I like those. I like the four agreements. I think that it's a good guideline.
The first agreement is to be impeccable with your word. With your word. What do you think about that?
Well, I mean, of course, you know, I think it's important. I mean, you're only as good as your word anyway.
What's up, parcera? Hey,
How are
parcera!
you? Hi, sweetie. Thanks for tuning in. Aren't you supposed to be working?
I think so too. Kia, Johnny's from Medellin, right?
Yeah, he is. From Colombia.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Parcero.
Yes, my kids are half Colombian. So you all
Yeah.
know. So yeah, thanks for tuning in, Johnny. It's always fun. Speaking of my kids, hold on 1 second.
Love that book. Yeah, you see that? The four agreements. So, for me, it's very important the four agreements, but when you go and dissect one by one, you understand much better about what exactly you need to be more stronger and which area you're more weak. So are you here now? Okay. So what I was saying is about the first one, that is the word. For me, that one is very important. One of them, four of them are very important, but for me, the word is very important because it's you. You're representing you. If you don't have your words like a gold, like everything you say through your mouth, it's not real. It's not true. It's like you just like lying to yourself about it.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I mean, also, your word is, oh, good night, Tori. Thanks
Good
for
night,
tuning in.
Tori.
We appreciate you. I love to see a new face. uh,
Johnny, I already read it.
yeah. Well, your word is sort of what you carry with you. You know, you're only as good
Exactly.
as your word, right? So if you're not true to your own word, are you really true to yourself? And if you're not true to yourself, how much do you value yourself? So it comes back to a self-worth, self-love issue to me personally.
Oh, Jackie's here.
Yay! Okay. So,
Jackie's
so
here.
Hey,
Awesome.
yes, I know I seemed a little distracted, but I was trying to talk to our guest. She was having trouble logging in, and we have a really special show for you today. Hi, Angeline, sweetheart. Thank you for tuning in. You're going to love this episode. Stay tuned, okay? So, this
Yes.
one is for ladies and gentlemen. It's a very, very, very special episode. It's something that's really close to my heart. And I do want to pick up the conversation of the four agreements. So let's save that for another day, okay?
Yes.
A little more. So if you are loving that, we will do a whole episode on the four agreements coming up soon, okay? But
Exactly.
this is really important because, so I'm going to share something personal just in case it is happening to you or someone you love, in order for you to feel supported or to feel understood, or just so that you know that you're not alone, okay? Male or female, all right? So when I was 16 years old, I was diagnosed with an eating disorder, okay? I was diagnosed as a compulsive overeater, which means I binge ate. So if you're familiar with bulimia, which is an eating disorder, is where you eat a lot of food and then you purge it out somehow, whether it's through laxatives or through vomiting, okay? And anorexia is, we'll go into this a little further, when you don't eat. You're essentially, you're starving yourself, okay? So I did not have that at the time. The first thing I was diagnosed with was compulsive overeating, which is binge eating, which is I would just eat a lot of stuff. Okay, and I didn't purge it out, and it was an emotional thing. It was about eating my emotions and going through very difficult years as a teenager, and I did not have as you all know, I'm a child abuse survivor, so I did not have a good support system at home, and so a lot of components play a part in that, but I actually took it out on my body. Okay. So
Right.
when I got older and I decided to go to the military, I, of course, was able to work through that process and get better. And I wanted to get into the military, so I had to lose weight. And I did that. So I got in shape, went into the military. Well, about midway through my military career, I got really sick and I lost a lot more weight, and I had to deal with that. So, because I lost so much weight, people started to think that I had anorexia. So it was like rumors on the base. The base is kind of like a college campus or a high school. So there's a lot of stuff. So I had to deal with, and there was a lot of things going on in my military career at that time that were unsettling, we'll say. So I was very stressed. I got very skinny. People thought I had an eating disorder, and I overcompensated again. So I put on a lot of weight. Well, the next time that I was going to lose this weight, I decided to create a huge calorie deficit. And then I would only eat like 300 to 600 calories a day, and I would work out 3 times a day. Now, technically, that would make me anorexic, right?
Right.
But I didn't lose a pound. So no one would have ever thought that I was anorexic, but I was.
Because you was maintaining, you was doing it, but you was maintaining.
I wasn't losing a pound because my body was like, no, you're starving, right? Like, so it was really a struggle for me to get better. And what helped me to get better was I hired a nutritionist at the gym I worked out with, because I was so frustrated because I thought, I didn't even realize I had a disorder. But I will tell you, I was losing my hair. I was having panic attacks. I was having all these side effects. I was foggy and disoriented on top of being foggy and disoriented from fibro fog. So there's a lot of components to it. And it was a lot of work for me to work myself out of that and to get a healthy relationship with body image as well as diet and exercise. And then again, it all comes back down to self-love, self-worth. Okay? So number one. It's the number one thing. And so my guest today, she is an expert in eating disorders, okay? And she has a lot of knowledge that can help people. And I say this because it's not just women. There are a lot of men that suffer with this. In fact, I knew one in boarding school as well. A guy.
My husband had that too.
You see? So it's not just women. You could be a man right now and think you may not have it, and you do. So if you're watching today, and you or someone you know is suffering with this, maybe you might learn here something today that can help you help them, or at least lead them in the direction, because sometimes they're not ready to get the help, but at least you'll have knowledge, and armed with that knowledge is a big step. So my guest today is Jax Allen. She's an incredible eating disorder expert. She helps people to begin to become well, right? And there's a lot of components to it. I really can't do justice in explaining it, but I want to bring her on so that you all can ask questions if you have them, or learn something that might help you and your family or someone you love. So without further ado, Jax.
Jax, let's bring her in.
Bring her in.
Hi, Gloria. Hi, Kia.
How are you?
I'm good. I do apologise for my lateness and my technical difficulties, but we're here now.
It happens. It's a live show. We just roll.
It happens. And you've been here. I kind of gathered you've been talking about the 4 agreements, which is actually a really, really good book to segue into speaking about eating disorders. Never make assumptions. Always do your best. Don't take it personally. And what's the other one?
I have it here. Is one. Okay, be impeccable with your word. Don't take anything personally. Don't make assumptions, and always do your best.
Yeah. So all of those things are actually relevant to eating disorder recovery. So I wanted to start with giving a bit of structure to what I'm going to say.
So Jax, before we start in our conversation, I want you to tell everybody where's your location and what time is now.
Okay, so I'm in Bristol in the UK, and the time now is 10 to 9.
Okay. All right, so let's start. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah, not at all, not at all. Please do feel free to, if someone's got questions, or if you've got questions you want to interrupt me, please do, because I just tend to talk and talk and talk and talk. Kia knows this. So yeah, to start off with, to give a bit of structure to what I'm saying, I kind of would like to sort of take you through some of my ideas about eating disorders in the way that I would encourage someone to look at, how they would structure their own healing around it, or how I might help someone, how I might structure, the healing process. And I think one of the most important things to say is that actually, what you said, Kia, was a really good introduction. It was a really good overview of what, sort of like in nuggets of actually what eating disorders are, what they can be, how they affect your life, where they come from, and what you said there about you're finding your circumstances completely overwhelming. I would say that was one of the most that was one of the most important things in the sort of the build up to the eating disorder. Eating disorders, I see them as ways of dealing with an overwhelming amount of stress in our lives. So it can sometimes feel like they just come from nowhere. They could just appear out of the blue, but actually they're extremely complex disorders. And I think that one of the things that a misperception maybe one might say of eating disorders is that they are lifestyle choices. A friend's family can say, oh, why can't you just snap out of it? Or why can't you just eat it? Just why can't you just sort it out? And actually, they're not lifestyle choices. I would actually categorize them as psychiatric disorders. But psychiatric disorders that we can absolutely heal from completely and totally, not just be in recovery from, but be completely recovered from, to the extent where we can actually use them, we can alchemize the experience of the eating disorder and turn it into something, positive in our lives. Lost my sound, however negative it might have been at the time. So, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
So they are, they're really, they're complex disorders, and they have their foundations in many factors. And what you said, Kia, about having suffered abuse as a child, that's one of the factors. I would say another factor is actually there seems to be a genetic link, or I would put that more, maybe couch that more in the terms of epigenetics. If you want to look at the work of Dr. Bruce Lipton, he gives in his book, The Biology of Belief, he gives a very sort of clear indication. It's fascinating how we express our genes depending on our environment. So that will have something to do with it as well. It will also be, and as you so rightly said, Kira, about low self-esteem. So anything during our childhood and our early attachment patterns that has led to, low self-esteem being something that we've grown up with, that can, that has a big, effect later on as to whether we develop eating disorders or not, whether we've been bullied. Another thing that I think is really relevant here is if we're highly sensitive people. Now, I can't remember the author, but it's a really good book called The Highly Sensitive Person, and it's the Elaine Aron, I think it is, estimates that say 10 to 15% of the population actually could be categorized as highly sensitive people. And this means that people who are highly sensitive tend to be more intuitive, they tend to be more sensitive to tastes and smells and overwhelm, loud noises, and that they may feel absolutely, completely and utterly overwhelmed by, particularly as children, by something that another child might just like, oh, water off a duck's back. So these experiences that we can end up building up in our bodies as cellular memories. You know, if children don't have the emotional wherewithal or the understanding or the emotional development necessarily to understand all of the experiences that happen to us as children. So if something is completely overwhelming, then that can kind of stay lodged with us and stay stuck with us, and can you know, sort of be, you know, form the foundations of toxic shame, which has, you know, is another thing that is linked with eating disorders. So all of these things can be there in the background, and there's many other things, but I'm aware of the time. I don't want to go into all of the details. You're more than welcome to, you know, to get in touch with me.
I have a question.
And to ask more about it. Go on.
I have another question too.
So before we keep moving forward, you mentioned toxic shame.
Yeah.
And I would love for you to elaborate on that for our audience, so in case, you know, someone isn't familiar with it.
Okay. So toxic shame. I would say that's, you know, we have natural shame. We have natural shame, like I wouldn't take all of my clothes off and run down the street where I live because I'd be embarrassed. We have natural shame around things like, you know, doing our bodily processes. You know, you do that in front of people. We also have natural shame, actually, and this buys into, you know, links into the eating disorders thing. We also have natural shame around doing things that are bad for our bodies actually generate shame. So addictions, eating disorders will increase the sense of shame. And I would say toxic shame, as opposed to natural shame, is the shame that we have, in a way, and there's no blame or guilt or associated here, but the shame that we feel, we must be a bad person because, you know, a parent has said you should be ashamed of yourself, or a teacher has said you should be ashamed of yourself, or, you know, we've been made to feel less than worthy, less than good, or that we've done that somehow we're bad people for reasons that actually, you know, for example, let me just give you a really simple example. For example, when we're babies, we don't have any sense of disgust, really. We don't have any sort of, like, so we might be you know, interested in the contents of our nappies. We might be kind of like, you know, and if our mother comes along and shames us about that, we're kind of like, well, what's wrong with my poop? Is beautiful. It's something that's come out of my body. How could you possibly tell me off and tell me that I should be ashamed when I'm just investigating the world, you know? So that kind of shaming, that kind of, and it's not, the parents aren't, they're just doing their best. It's like the Four Agreements, they're just doing the best with the knowledge that they have, and they may feel disgusted about, you know, the poop being smeared all over the coffee table or whatever it is. But that kind of, that's what I mean by toxic shame. Does that answer the question? And it's the shame that is put upon us unknowingly, unwittingly, but as we're growing up, so that we feel like there's something wrong with us, that we feel like, you know, we're bad people. Or if we've got an older sibling that bullies us, and again, that's one of the factors in eating disorders. That, you know, that, and they're children, they're innocent, they're just doing what they're doing, you know. But toxic shame can happen accidentally, but it can feel very. And some children, some people might not be susceptible to it, but highly sensitive people are more likely to be susceptible to, you know, to feeling shame and to feeling, oh, there's something wrong with me. Something inherently wrong with me. That's what I mean by toxic shame. So all of this can add up to, by the time we come to teenage years, and tragically much earlier now, you know, the eating disorders are starting to you know, appear in people's lives. That they actually, eating disorders, another thing about them, I wouldn't say that they were addictions, because I don't see them like that, but they can act very out in our lives very much like an addiction. So I've also worked as an drug addiction, alcohol and gambling addiction counsellor. So I found the link with the eating disorders particularly fascinating, in that, no, they're not addictions per se, but some of the behaviours can be addicting. So it can be very it can be very addicting, the process of, say, binge eating. If you've got binge eating disorder, or if you're suffering from bulimia, having the dopamine fix of having the, looking forward to doing the binge, because let's face it, part of the reason why some people get into bulimia is, oh well, I can binge eat my favorite foods, and then I can purge them, and I'm not going to get fat. So there's that, and there's also the addicting component of some of the foods that are eaten. They can act out as addictions do, and in the same way that, say, drugs and alcohol are used as a medicament to control or suppress or to numb out anxiety, helplessness, hopelessness, in someone that becomes addicted, gradually becomes addicted to those, then they work out, actually, if I have a glass of wine, it chills me out, that, and then that, over a process of time, if that's used as a medicament, it can eventually become an addiction if that's the path of that addiction. But similarly, eating disorders can work in the same way, in that they can be used to numb out or get a sense of control. I know that when I suffered from anorexia, I can look back on my life now and just think, okay, so that was my way of coping with an overwhelmingly stressful period of my life. And the anorexia was almost like that was the only sense of control that I felt that I had at the time. And even though I wasn't aware of it at the time, because if I'd known what I was doing, then I would have got it. But that sense of control of, right, I can control my food intake, I can control the number on the scales, this is what I can control. Refusing to have food, refusing to eat. And another thing about anorexia is that if you don't eat, you can't feel. So it's a way of controlling your feelings. If you're not eating, then effectively your body shuts down. You can't, if you're not having any, nowhere near the range or the range of nutrition that you need, or the caloric intake that you need, your brain can't actually make the neurotransmitters like serotonin. For those people that are on SSRIs, you'll understand what I mean, but the neurotransmitter that makes us feel chilled out, that makes us feel, okay, I can cope with life, all of those really precious brain chemicals that make us be able to function, we shut those down. Anorexia, another thing that happens eventually, is that you lose your hormonal cycle as well, because you simply haven't got the nutrition to make the hormones. So all sorts of things happen. So that is a way of completely shutting down feelings, which, of course, if your feelings are completely overwhelming, that's the medicament. The anorexia is the medicament. And with bulimia, it can be very numbing to eat and eat and eat and eat and eat without, that can be the numbing thing. And then the purging thing can be self-punishment, or it can feel like relief. And then, after the purge, it feels like exhaustion. And then often there's, shame and anger about the cycle of just thinking, oh, I'm never going to do it again. And then the whole way that the cycle goes is, if someone's starving to try to mitigate the effects of, the binge that maybe they've had the previous day, then they're hungry. And if they're not allowing themselves to eat certain foods, then those certain foods, which are, probably going to be quite high in calories and fat and protein, that their body is desperately craving and saying, I want some of that, please. And then that becomes that can start off another binge. So it's a cyclical thing. So people can sort of feel like they're entering into an eating disorder, saying, I've got control of this is okay, I can, but very soon it actually becomes a self-repeating cycle, and the cycle of shame and low self-esteem just drives it.
I have a question. So this is like a very extreme situations, and maybe there's also like a maybe mild situations. And I'm gonna ask you this: when a person eat normal, but every time when they look in the mirror, they always look. It looks like she's overweight. And she's not overweight, but every time she looks in the mirror, she sees an image of overweight, not like overweight for her.
Yeah.
So what is that disorder that the person have?
So I'd say a couple of things here, at least, that going into that. One of the things I would say that if we look in the mirror and I can certainly relate to this as a child. Certainly, I would sometimes look in the mirror and I'd imagine that my body was like not even necessarily fat, but just out of proportion. So there's a tad. What you're touching on there is a tad of body dysmorphia, which I'm not an expert on, but it would feed into, and it's sometimes, an eating disorder can be in I've seen people that, not as clients, but, that I've known, that I've, been work colleagues that have had body dysmorphia, and that has led to them becoming anorexic. Another thing about this is that the feeling of feeling fat can often be around unexpressed feelings. So unconscious, unexpressed feelings can make people feel fat if they've got an eating disorder, whereas actually what they're feeling, or what they're kind of like their body's feeling, is actually these unexpressed feelings that need to be acknowledged, that need to be felt, that need to be able to come out. So, and it's the thing about looking in the mirror and seeing, I look overweight. That is part of the driver for an eating disorder, or it can be, if that's taken to extremes. I would imagine that quite a lot of women look in the mirror and just think, I could look a bit slimmer. I could, that in itself isn't an eating disorder, but I just feel for myself, isn't that tragic? Because it's part of the way that we're conditioned in society, part of what we've absorbed from from mainstream media, or from the modelling industry. And I'm not blaming the modelling industry; it's not their fault. Or part of what we've absorbed from looking at social media and all these airbrushed pictures. All these pictures of people in the media that are they're airbrushed, and they're made to look different from what they actually look like, and women comparing themselves to that.
And you know what? Before social media in my country, especially in my city, I think that we have a lot of problems with that, because over there, all women like 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 years old are looking something to do in their bodies, because they are not the look of the body that normally is sexy or attracted to men.
Yes.
And I see in my country is in the city where I am from, you can get the best surgery doctors because of plastic surgery, because they are practicing all these women in my city, because they need to have the perfect butt, the perfect titties, the slim here, very slim, and always the comparison with other women. So if you have a little bit overweight, you're completely out of shape, you're so fat, you don't fit in the normative of the women the way should look. So before social media, I would say culturally, and some cultures are very strong on that, because it's like, we need to look beautiful, we need to look in some way for this our men to look of us, and it's completely wrong.
And it's an absolute tragedy. It's an absolute tragedy, and part of it comes from oh, there are so many threads. There are so many threads here. Part of it comes from this thing of low self-worth, low self-esteem, because that, you know, that woman not having that sovereignty of just saying, actually, I don't care what the norm is supposed to be. I feel sexy in my own body. I love my own body. I feel like that I'm just accepting what divinity has given us as our own body. There's another thing here, and I think, and this is a big subject that you know, we could do a whole webinar on this, is about people's fear of death. And that is what my feeling is, part of what drives this. You have to look young. You have to look young, and to look young, you have to have pert titties, you have to have a slim waist that shows that you're still of childbearing age, you have to have a tight ass, you have to have no wrinkles, so you have a facelift, and get all these wrinkles, and all of this stuff. And the way that I compute it, it's hang on a minute, we are throwing out the crones, the old women. It's this almost like Mother Earth hating culture that actually, you know, in Native American tradition and in indigenous cultures, the elders of the society are revered because they've had the wisdom of living all of those years. And it's like, in this society, it's just, they just get thrown away because we're not seen as sexy anymore. We're not seen as youthful anymore. We're not seen as, so my gut feeling about it is that all of that, you know, the unconscious of this is driven by, it's a fear of death. It's a fear of looking old, of maybe not being sexy anymore in that way. But of course, you know, we can be as sexy as long as we feel sexy.
Exactly.
You know, in our bodies. But just because we're not perceived in that way by society, it's, you know, pushing women into having all of these actually quite harmful procedures, and actually very harmful not only to their bodies but to their minds, to feel that they have to be doing this stuff to their bodies, when it's actually, how about embracing and the self-worth of being able to look in the mirror and just say, well, yeah, there's nothing wrong with me.
Exactly.
You know, I'm a 50-year-old woman. I don't look like I did in my 20s, but I'm glad that I'm not in my 20s, actually, because I'm sorry, I shouldn't laugh, but that's when I was suffering.
You should be happy that you were...
I don't want to go back to that hell.
You should be...
I feel you, Jax.
You should be happy to be 50, you know, you should be happy that you are where you are, because if you're not 50, you're probably not here, you know?
Every day is a blessing. Every single day is a blessing. And look, okay, so no shade on any 20-year-olds that are watching. No. But the point is, in our 20s, we thought we knew a lot of stuff, but we're still really learning and figuring it out, you know, and even if it's just about our appearance or how to take care of ourselves or how to love ourselves or how to be well. There's a lot going on there in your 20s, a lot of growth, a lot of learning going on, really. It's the first decade you're on your own. At least it was in my time. We were on our own in our 20s. And so college, whatever, your first jobs, all of that. There's a lot of important learning going on. Okay, when you double that, and you start to hit 40, or you kind of know who you are.
Yeah.
You know what you like, you know what looks good on your body. Even if you're struggling with body image, most of the time, by the time you hit 40, you know how to make it look the way you want it to look, whether or not you are loving what's underneath those clothes, right? You know how to apply your makeup or not apply your makeup if you don't like makeup, how to wear your hair, how you want to look and feel within yourself. And you've sorted out a lot of issues that you had when you were younger. So that's the important thing of aging, is that learning process. There's so much you learn in your 30s, there's so much you learn in your 40s, and so on and so on and so on, as you become the crone or you become the OG, the older gentleman, right?
I'm gonna say more simple for people, more simple. When you are like, I'm 48, I'm closer to 50, you're mastering to make your makeup to not show too much the wrinkles.
Sometimes some people don't have wrinkles at 50 though,
I
right?
have.
Okay. So, well, you're not 50 yet, my darling, anyway, but still, some people don't. In my culture, in the African American community, we don't age with a lot of wrinkles.
No.
So most of the people I've ever seen, anyway, I could be wrong, but look around. Tell me if I'm wrong.
No. In me, because I have like a light skin, yes, I have more wrinkles of normally women have. But I don't care because I know I have a thin skin and that is my style and that is my signature, and later I gotta be more wrinkled. So I'm prepared for the wrinkle time.
So when I was younger, I used to feel like, okay, so every wrinkle that you get is sort of like a gift, right?
Yes.
Because every year that you get to live this life experience is sort of a gift if you perceive it that way. Some of them are really rough, and believe me, I had my share of rough ones, but they were all learning experiences, right?
You just explained that very beautiful. So I have a many gift in my face.
You got a lot of presents. So the moral of the story is, if you're 20, look forward to aging and find your beauty and understand that you're beautiful now and you'll be beautiful then. Right.
Okay, so why we jump from wrinkles to eating disorder?
Because it all goes to the same thing of beautiful, and the things that we do to change our bodies to make ourselves feel like we fit into what society dictates as what's normal, as beautiful. Right, Jax?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
Please continue, Jax.
Continue.
Okay, so yeah, so the visioning part is about the eating disorder is noticing where you are with it. Noticing, has it got control of you? Do you still feel like you've got control of it? Possibly not. And it's just like I used to think, oh, I can overcome this. It's okay. I'll get out of it. And actually, because I didn't get treatment for it, it dragged on for years. And part of the reason was that it took me quite a long time to actually realise what was happening to me. And then it wasn't really in the mainstream back then. When was this? 1990. So it wasn't kind of like all over the place. It was kind of like, I just didn't understand what was going on. I couldn't admit it to myself until it was just blatantly obvious to me, and I just thought, actually, I've really got a problem with this.
And how old you was when you start with your problem?
I was 21, so it was in my final year at university. And the thing was, the reason that it started, because people might find this helpful as well, the reason that it started, so the background context to it was a couple of years before that. And this is when, in the era that before they realised that very low calorie diets were a danger for anorexia, for people getting anorexia and bulimia, because they've done the research and there is. So this was before they'd done this. And so I was able to get, I can't even remember what it was, maybe, my late teens or whatever, this thing, well, I'm not going to name it actually, because I don't want to do naming and shaming, but a very low calorie diet, which was meal shakes. And you had a supervisor and you said, okay, I want to lose half a stone. Sorry, that's what, 6 pounds, or I want to lose, 13 pounds, which is a stone, or whatever. You go along and you have a supervisor. So you have meetings on the phone, or you go and see them. But you had to go and see them actually, and they'd weigh you. They'd give you so they would sell you, they'd be the agent for these meal shakes. And so they'd sort of make sure that you had a realistic weight loss goal, etc., etc., etc. So couple of years, before the anorexia started, I did this weight loss program. I probably lost, a few pounds. Got back to, because I wasn't really, I've never really actually been clinically overweight, but I've got a tiny, tiny frame, so I wasn't, happy with how I was carrying. Didn't have problems with, my body image. Just thought, I could just do with losing a few kilos. Get rid of, a little bit extra. But I was really strong. I was muscular. I was really kind of like very athletic, into sports. So I carried it hard. I just thought, sleep. So did this, no problem. starting eating again normal foods. As soon as I'd finished the diet, lost as much weight, you know, 3 kilos or whatever, no problem starting the diet, starting normal eating again. But when I did the same thing, having, you know, gained too much weight over the summer vacation, because I was, you know, working as a nursing auxiliary, so I was snacking too much at break time, and, you know, weight crept on. Thought, right, I want to, you know, lose that, you know, that few kilos again. Found myself a supervisor for this very low calorie diet, which was still available. Got the very low calorie diet, and then did it, and then lost the weight that I wanted to lose over that period of time. But unbeknownst to me, during that period of time, actually that's when the anorexia started. And the reason that it became a problem then was because at the time I was doing my final year at university, which was really, really stressful for me. And my mother had become seriously ill to the extent where I knew that she was living on borrowed time. So I knew I was going to, and it completely, you know, cut across the development of my relationship with my mother, which was really important to me. Obviously, and I hadn't really felt like I'd ever had her emotionally when I was a child. And that was just beginning to develop as a really nice kind of like, you know, almost adult daughter to adult mum relationship. Her illness just cut across all of that, and it was also extremely stressful for me, sort of knowing in my heart, you know, my mum's not going to live into her 80s. You know, we're lucky that she didn't pass, you know, with the first instance of her illness. So that overwhelming stress, I just didn't, and I didn't even realise what effect it was having on me because it was unconscious. But that overwhelming stress tipped it over the edge into, oh right, okay, so this is, and unbeknownst to me, the losing weight and the not eating had become a mechanism of control, so I didn't have to feel my feelings. And that was how the anorexia started. So it's to, you know, and if I'd admitted to myself, oh, you know, that I've got a real problem with this and I need to get into treatment right now. Another thing about eating disorders is the sooner you can get into treatment, the better the outcome, the faster you're going to be able to get out of them. And the less damage that, you know, that potentially is going to be done, you know, to the body. So the visioning is admit to yourself, and how does it affect your life? How might life look if you could get out of it and be in recovery? You know, what are your biggest challenges? What maybe have you tried in the past to get out of it? And what, you know, what's standing in your own way? What's stopping you from being able to heal? And how would you see yourself in 6 months? Or a year, or 5 years? A, if you did recover. B, if you didn't recover. You know, is this going to drag on for another 6 months? Is it going to drag on for a year? Is it you're going to lose all your teeth and lose all your hair and lose your health? And I'm not going to go into the horror stories of actually what long-term eating disorders do, because I don't need to. I don't want to drag down the energy. But, you know, they're dangerous. They are dangerous. Fairly horrific conditions. They can have long-lasting effects on your body. So having a vision is just like looking at the strategies and skills that you can use. So understanding what, you know, recognizing your own problem and your own history of it, because eating disorders are, yes, they're very complex, but I would also say they're completely individual. There is individual in their formation as the individual, as we are. There's loads of different factors that may have contributed to that. You know, I'd pick out some of the factors that I have in common with Kia, such as, you know, the feeling bullied, growing up feeling afraid of, you know, certain people, teachers at school. I grew up being afraid of my mum, which is, she was a lovely woman, she wasn't a scary woman, but it's just like that was what she passed on to me from her own parenting, unconsciously, straight. If she'd known, it would have been horrible for her to know that, but that's one of the factors. Another thing is, and this is a really sort of like really subtle one, but if you've grown up in a family where the father thinks, even if it's not explicitly stated, if it's just implicit, if the father thinks that women should be a certain shape, then that can predispose, you know, girls to having, you know, particularly bulimia. And there's things about If you've had a difficult relationship with your mum, you're more likely to get the one. If you've had a difficult relationship with your dad, you're more likely to get the other, i.e. anorexia or bulimia. And it also depends on whether someone is able to purge. Some people will find that they're not able to actually, make themselves physically sick. And so maybe they will come, maybe they'll develop binge eating disorder, but that will be binge eating disorder without bulimia. Maybe if someone can make themselves purge, then that's more likely to go down the route of bulimia. And there's other certain slightly different personality traits. For example, when I did my diploma in working therapeutically with people suffering from eating disorders, I did a lot of reading around that, and I remember reading a book about anorexia basically, and it was a carbon copy of my personality type and the stuff that's happened to me, and I thought, gosh, isn't that interesting? So they do have roots, but it's important to understand, because if we can understand what's happening to us either with an eating disorder or with an addiction, then that's half the journey towards having that realization. So we think, I understand why I do that behavior. That really, really helps to break the pattern of it. If we're ready, if we're willing to break that pattern, it really, really helps to understand.
So Jax, I have another question. So when this person overcome or find the root of the cause of any problem of eating disorder, that person later on can also relapse in that can happen again in a different way or same way or stronger than the one she had before?
Yes, that's a really good question. Eating disorders are relapsing conditions. So it's like they're difficult, they can be really difficult to get out of. We don't suddenly wake up one day and have a completely healed relationship with our body and with our relationship with our food and our relationship with our self-esteem. It's kind of like it's a journey, and it's almost like a spiritual journey of seeing, okay, the holistic system of the body and mind is connected. And one of the things that I've already spoken about is with eating disorders, it's very difficult to feel. It's a kind of there's a lot of mentalizing around, I'm not allowed to eat that food because it's going to make me fat, or if I eat that food then I'm a bad person, or if I eat anything, that means I'm a bad person. My jeans are too tight. Like you were saying, I look fat when I look in the mirror, or whatever it is. And it's just like we tend to be cut off from the actual feelings in our body, so we're not aware of how we're feeling, and that's part of the problem.
And
so
some people
relapse back into it.
And some people also can feel guilty when they eat, is also part of the eating disorder.
Absolutely, and guilty when they eat. Guilty when they eat certain foods, if they've got, and it's another way of, part of the skills and strategy is to recognize the voice in your head. If, some people that have been in eating disorders therapy will understand, the voice as, and some people say, I don't have voices, but I would say the voice is a broad term to include the urge to starve or to purge or to do the eating disorders behavior. Or it can be more like a voice saying, you're fat, you look crap in those jeans, or you look, or you don't deserve to eat that food, or if you eat that chocolate eclair then you're going to put on 2 kilos, or whatever it is. But the voice
like negative conditioning.
Yes.
It could be like subconscious negative conditioning that presents itself as sort of like a voice in your head.
Yes.
Yeah, or it can feel like a part of your, and some people, relate to it as like, almost like a separate part that they're arguing with, and that part is always winning the argument. And that's one of the most important things as well about strategy and going into recovery, is noticing what is the voice of the eating disorder, and getting back in touch with what is my voice of how I know that I could care for myself, how I could eat, how I could allow myself to eat, how I could allow myself to eat healthily, how I could actually be, more kind and forgiving towards myself. And that all of that feels so out of sight for someone suffering from an eating disorder and really low self-esteem. It's difficult to get back into those things. But at least if we recognize, if I have an eating disorder voice that says, when I'm sort of 7 stone, that says you're too fat, then I can, if I know that that is the voice speaking to me rather than my actual belief about myself, I can, the work, I love the work of Byron Katie. It's like, is it true? Can you be absolutely sure that that's true? What would happen if you dropped that thought? How would you feel in your body when you think that that's true? What would happen if you put that down? What would happen if you actually couldn't believe that was true? So to start challenging our, the eating disorder's voice and saying, hey, what's really me? What's really me, and what's the voice?
So could these be like intrusive thoughts, like unwanted thoughts? Like you're going about your business and you're going to, put on something and then suddenly out of nowhere you sort of feel like, oh, I look terrible in this, or I look fat, or you keep hearing that thought and it's not a thought that you really want to be thinking, if that makes sense, but it just interrupts like your daily normal thoughts with negativity, like I look fat, or I don't, or everybody hates me, or whatever that is that drives you to the thing where you either binge and purge or don't eat.
Some people obsess about food, particularly if they're anorexic and their body is starving. They're going to be thinking about food the whole time, which is just going to be even worse, because then some people, suffering from anorexia will even feel guilty thinking about foods, and they'll think that they're a bad person for wanting to eat certain foods, and it's such a trap, because of course that feeds into the shame and it feeds into the cycle of and there's triggers for their behavior, like if someone's feeling irritable or lonely, can you hear me, or tired or angry or miserable, noticing that or overwhelmed or bored, or any of those kind of like anxiety feelings that are going to be triggers. And it's noticing, for each individual they're going to be different things, but to notice and to use relapses, as you said, Gloria. They are relapsing conditions, or even just trying to come out of the disorder in the first instance, of noticing, actually, say I'm going to use myself as an example, even though it's more than 25 years since I've recovered from the eating disorder. But if I were to sort of think, I just feel this feeling of anxiety or whatever, right, I'm going to have a binge. Or I feel really upset because my boyfriend's just dumped me or whatever, so I'm going to have a boyfriend, because people, another thing about eating disorders is that people like to hide their bodies away. But say I've just had an argument with my friend and I feel really upset, and so that gets numbed out with having a binge, and that's like used like the addictive thing of like. But it's noticing, okay, you're coming out of the eating disorder. I would encourage someone, if to notice what events preceded that urge to go out and buy a whole load of junk food and eat it and then purge, or just eat it without purging. So it's noticing what goes on, and that sort of, that's part of the awareness and part of the understanding, part of the understanding of what is actually going on here. And it's a CBT technique, but a very powerful one, of just noticing how do my cognitions affect my thought processes, affect my physiology, what's going on in my body, affect my behavior, affect my emotions, how are all of those things linked, and how is that linked to the process of binging or purging and doing the eating disorder behavior.
So Jax, I have another question for you. So because people relate more to people that have the issue, and what we know that you have eating disorders in your past, what was the aha moment that made you to feel, I need to stop this? and what they need to happen for you to be aware of that, so people maybe can relate to that and maybe can have an aha moment when they hear this story about you.
Okay, my feeling about, I'm a very good example. Maybe Kia's story is a better example of it, because I didn't know what to do about it. I think that's what it was. I just didn't have a clue. I didn't realise that actually, ironically, since I work as a therapist now, and maybe that was part of my, as I was talking about alchemizing your journey, I didn't have the awareness that actually, there were people that I could go and see, that I would be able to sort it out. Plus the fact that I was a student for years, because first I did my first degree and then I went off and did my PhD, and so I didn't have any spare money. Therapy is quite expensive. So I just didn't have that option. And I think what changed it and helped me to recover was actually just moving into a better scenario. And so I wasn't experiencing that overwhelming stress, because my life situation had got better. I moved to a different city. It still persisted for a bit after that, but then moving in with finding a new set of friends who I actually felt, this is a life that actually became much more fun. So there wasn't a kind of moment of, right, I'm never gonna, I'm gonna heal, I'm not gonna do this again. I wish there had been much, years before. I wish there had been a kind of like, I have to sort this out moment. But, I didn't have a clue in my, I wasn't very emotionally mature in my early 20s. I just was a kid, I just didn't have the wherewithal or the resources. But it does come to that point, and I would use the addictions analogy of if one can feel that one is hitting rock bottom, that is the time. When it feels like, right, I'm on my knees, this disorder has got control of my life, I can't see my friends because I'm too ashamed, I feel constantly ashamed of myself, I've lost friendship, and this is a list of things, I've lost friendships because of it, I've had to lie to people, I've stolen food from people, I just feel totally ashamed the whole time, I've lost relationships over this, people have abandoned me because they think I'm weird or they can't cope with me. A lot of people are so shame bound around it, they can't speak to their friends, but of course it's obvious what's going on. It's obvious if somebody's purging, even if someone thinks that it isn't, it is obvious. It's obvious if someone is, not eating properly, your family and friends soon pick up on it, and it's losing the trust in those relationships in exactly the same way as people who lose the trust of their nearest and dearest in serious addiction. So it's that point of hitting rock bottom and just thinking, I can't cope. And being bulimic is horrendous. Being anorexic is horrendous. It's like having no energy, not being able to eat, not being able to think straight, not being when your BMI is below 17.5, really you need to be in a hospital situation. Once your BMI drops below 17 and a half, you can't think straight. You become completely dissociated. So it's just hellish. And for bulimics and for binge eating disorder, the financial cost, the cost not only of the foods but of the lost job opportunities, the lost motivation, and it's often sort of like in fairly young years, so all of those wasted years, those wasted opportunities, all of it's such a massive waste of life that we can, but when we're in the middle of it, can just be completely numb to. We can't see what life might be like otherwise, or what life might have been like otherwise. And they're relapsing conditions if we can't heal that aspect of what's going on with the self-esteem. We can feel, this happened to me with the anorexia, just thinking, I'm going to get better, and then putting some weight on, getting back into recovery, and then a very, very, very dear friend committed suicide, and that just like straight back into it, because I just couldn't cope. And that was my, you know, and it was almost like it was like watching a car crash in slow motion and just thinking, oh, this is what's happening to me again. But you know, I just wasn't able to, because I hadn't healed it. I wasn't able to pull myself out of it in a way. So
you can recognize when a new episode of eating disorder can come to you.
I did at the time, because it was obvious. It's, you know, it's getting back, you know, and again it's the addiction model of noticing when those behaviours start happening again. Noticing if someone is able to be honest with themselves about it. Say if they have been anorexic and they're getting back into recovery, you know, and starting to be changing their attitude towards food, maybe changing their attitude towards their bodies, starting to be able to, you know, to eat a wider range of foods and being able to, you know, tolerate putting on weight, and then something stressful happens. And they will know that if they're honest with themselves, they will know. And similarly with the bulimia, if someone's getting away from bulimia, and then, you know, and they're able to sort of, you know, be for a while without purging, without binging, and then they catch themselves, you know, in the store buying the foods that they know that they're going to use for a binge, and then that's the time to realise, why am I doing this? What's happened? Why do I feel the urge to do this when actually I was doing so well?
Right.
So it's noticing, just noticing as soon as those thoughts or behaviours, and there are other behaviours that, you know, that could go along with it, like weighing obsessively, or measuring, you know, with a you know, a tape measure, or, you know, pinching, or looking in the mirror, or feeling critical, or, you know, sort of like feeling, oh, my clothes are too tight, and I'm going to do something about it. I have to starve for the next week because my skinny jeans don't fit properly, or, you know, all those sorts of things. If people recognise it, then they can notice, this is what's happening, and then catch it in its tracks, and, you know, do the strategies to get themselves out of it. So it's doing the next right thing. Just thinking, okay, I'm gonna make myself a healthy meal, whether it's like a bit, you know, a little bit of protein, a little bit of carbohydrate, scrambled eggs on toast, whatever it is. So it can't turn into a binge. Another thing about eating disorders coming out of them that I want to mention, there's so much more I want to talk about, but I know we haven't got all night. But one of the things is it can be very difficult, having suffered from either bulimia or anorexia, to know actually what should I eat and how much should I eat. And I really like the Ayurvedic tradition of you should eat in one meal what you can hold in the palm of your hands, both hands, and that's about right. Actually, that's a good, you know, and a bit of good quality protein, bit of carb, you know, and a dietary fat. It's really, really important to have dietary fat. So just re-educating and sort of like learning those techniques, so that you've got some techniques in place. How to calm anxiety. So using the breath for mindfulness, and, you know, and feeling in the body, grounding on the earth, going and sitting on the earth, getting your bare feet and putting them on the earth, hugging a tree, getting outside in nature, taking a cold shower, doing what, I mean, you know, these are the things that I realised. A lot of my healing was via getting into shamanic work, which has always been, that's who I always was, and that was part of my problem. That was part of the reason why I became so messed up, because I had that forced out of me, because, you know, I was shoehorned into being a person in Western society, and it's just like, what? You know, that God may as well have taken a little indigenous baby and dropped it into Western society. And when I discovered as a small child that actually not everyone was clairvoyant, and not everyone spoke to plants and animals as though they'd speak to human beings, and you know, not everyone was connected with Mother Earth, and not everyone had that reverence for the sacredness of the planet, I was horrified. I just thought, oh my God, there's no one like me. And then when coming back into that circle of people, I just thinking, oh my good, thank goodness, this is my normal. But also training as a cacaoista. Cacao is really, really valuable as a tool for overcoming, working through in recovery eating disorders, because it's basically chocolate. So if you have chocolate cravings, that's what your body wants. It wants the cacao. I mean, it might want the sugar as well if you're addicted to sugar. But working as a cacaoista, you can, taking the cacao, the sacred medicine, introduces the idea, if it isn't already there, of food is medicine. Food is medicine. Food is sacred. It's sacred medicine. Cacao is the most nutritionally dense food known to mankind. And it's also a heart-opening plant, spirit medicine. So it can open our heart to self-forgiveness, which is really, really important with eating disorders, is to be able to forgive yourself, to be able to say, I'm sorry to yourself. I love your body, and say, I'm sorry I did that to you. I'm really, really sorry. And actually opening the heart in that way with cacao is like, it goes much deeper than talk therapy is great. I work as a psychotherapist, talk therapy is fantastic, but it doesn't necessarily heal on all of the levels. It doesn't heal on the emotional, spiritual, and on the high dimensional levels of our etheric being, and that's where some of the energy gets stuck. So we can go round and round and round in our head, talking about the same thing, peeling off the layers of the onion, but actually where that thing might be stuck is kind of like, it's actually in our spiritual body, or it's in our emotional body. And cacao just cuts through all of that. I'll just get the mind out of the way and get straight into our hearts. And our heart is electromagnetically, and so is our gut, actually, hundreds of times more powerful than our brain. So our heart and our gut and our body, that's where the power is, that's where the healing is. Our mind is just like, eating disorders are about mind chatter. If we're in our heads, if we're in our minds, we're not in our bodies. And if we can't get in our bodies because we can't feel, then we're always going to be up here looking in the mirror going, oh, do I not, does my bum look big in these jeans? Should I be wearing that? Should I even go out and see in public? Oh my God, I'm going to have to go out to dinner with, oh God, now what am I going to eat? Have they got salads on the menu? Oh, it's all this mentalizing. It's all just like, ooh. But taking cacao is, and it's actually, it's got anandamide, which is the bliss molecule. So this is picked up by our endocannabinoid system, the same system that picks up THC, which is the element of cannabis, which makes you feel high. It also has lots of tryptophan, which is the amino acid, i.e. the building blocks of proteins that one needs to make the thing that I mentioned earlier, serotonin, which is one of the key neurotransmitters for feeling chilled out. I could go on for another hour about the wonderful, splendid benefits of cacao, but that is part of the way that I work, and I deliberately bring it into the eating disorders work, because it's like, food is medicine, food is healing, and it's like, particularly for people that have chocolate issues and chocolate addictions, and they think, oh, but I love chocolate, but I mustn't have it. It's just like, I love chocolate and I must have it because it's cacao, and it's just like, it's actually good for you. And when I was still menstruating, even if I hadn't thought about chocolate all month, didn't want to have chocolate, so say if I don't normally have sugar in my diet. It's not a kind of, it's not an eating disorder thing. It just doesn't agree with my body. Basically, it gives me inflammation, and my body just doesn't like it. But when I was still menstruating, I needn't have had no chocolate cravings all month. And then the day before my period would come on, it was like, right, even if I didn't have any chocolate in the house, right, I have to go to the shops right now, and I have to buy some, 90% or 70% dark chocolate, and I would unashamedly just scoff the whole lot and just like, oh, now I feel better. And that was my body craving the components of the cacao. And ever since I started taking the cacao, no more chocolate cravings. And then I stopped eating then.
So Jax, how you drink your cacao, and how you get where you get the cacao, so people can maybe start doing that.
Yeah, I would always encourage people to buy cacao. Now, I'm wondering, so if you're in the UK, you can go to a website called Ritual Cacao, and the lady that is basically head of that, she was the woman that trained me as a cacaoista. if you live in Bristol, you can get in touch with me, and you can come and pick it up from me. There's also, I think he calls it Forever Ceremonial Cacao now. It used to be called Forever Cacao. Really lovely guy that sells cacao from Peru, the Ashaninka tribe cacao. Ritual Cacao sell the Ashaninka tribe cacao, and they also sell the Ecuadorian Satsuaku cacao, which is beautiful. That's the one that I tend to use. If you're in America,
I have a friend. She's in Mexico, and she sells cacao from Mexico, and is cultivated by chaman. Chaman is like a generational. So that cacao is very pure too.
Wonderful. So yeah, it needs to be proper ceremonial grade cacao, as the ones that I've mentioned, and the one that Gloria's mentioned. But if you're in the States, to be quite honest, you're best to getting it from, you know, a more local. I mean, you can order it from Ritual Cacao, but then you have to pay the postage cost on top of that. So it's possibly, you know, better. And it seems a bit silly that it comes all the way from South America to England, and then England all the way down. It's just a bit stupid when you can get it from Mexico.
So you drink the cacao in the morning, an empty stomach, or you do a little ritual. What you do?
Yes, and I'd say, you know, ritual and ceremony. That's a really good way of, again, sort of making food sacred, and realizing the sacred, that food is a gift from Mother Earth, and the more natural and unprocessed we can have our food, the better. And cacao is just like, you can either, you get the ceremonial cacao, which I've got some in the kitchen. I meant to bring it up with me. I didn't too much worry, but so it's a bit. It usually it comes as a, you know, a chunk, so you can just shave off like 20 grams, 25 grams of that, and cook up, say about 250 mils of water. Bring that, you know, in a saucepan, preferably not aluminium, ceramic if you've got it, or steel. Bring that to sort of like, do you know that when you're just getting the bubbles of water on the bottom of the saucepan, that it's just not a strong boil, but just and then you just put it in, you know, cut it up into little crumbs, put it in that, stir it, let it bubble up, and then take it straight down and just simmer it. And you can sing to it, you can put your intentions and your prayers for the day into it. You know, I sing my Icaros into it. Whatever it is, whatever prayer of self-healing you want for the cacao. Gratitude, really, really important to feel gratitude, to give, you know, give the cacao your gratitude, give the Pachamama your gratitude for the cacao.
I have one cacao here. See this? This is from Mexico. And I shave it, so I already have it here granulate. So I know exactly how much amount I can put in my coffee, in my cup.
Yeah. And for a shamanic dose, we use 42 grams, but that's quite heavy, it's quite full on. So I'd say for day-to-day use, 20 grams, 25 grams. And another thing about cacao is that it's a lovely bitter drink to have in the morning, and you can replace your coffee with cacao. One thing about coffee is that, yes, it's lovely, I do have it, it's an occasional treat, but if you suffer from anxiety or antsiness or stress, you're better off having cacao, because it's the theobromine is very, very similar in chemical nature to caffeine, but it's a much more blissed out, much more chilled out feeling than caffeine, in particular if you're a highly sensitive person, can feel quite anxiety making. So it's a really, and it's, you know, coffee doesn't have, you know, it has got nutrients in it, you know, but cacao is just like so nutrient rich.
It's so beautiful. I love cacao. And I also want to, after the show, I want to ask you about the cacaoes. Cacaoes, that's the name of when you specialize in cacao?
Cacaoista, yeah.
Cacaoista. I want to learn to be like cacaoista, because I want to learn more about it, because I'm into that. I already have maybe 6 months taking cacao and doing my ritual, my ceremony. And the ritual, people think that is like a voodoo or magic and anything like that. It's like you're blessing what you're doing. Thank you for the water. You put the cacao in the water very carefully because it's for you, for feel better. So I love that concept of the cacao. I know what it is. I love it.
Yeah. And it's just, as you know, it just opens the heart, doesn't it?
Yes.
It's like you can let go of an awful lot of stuff. You can really, really, that. And the forgiveness with eating disorders is so important. And when I'd finished when I'd done the eating disorders diploma a few years ago, let's say, I don't know, about 4 years ago, I realised, when I was doing the work for that, submitting the written work for it, I realised that I had never actually forgiven myself completely for having the eating disorders. And it was such a sense of relief. And I hadn't even realised that I hadn't forgiven myself. I thought, it's all in the past. And what prompted me to even sort of think about, I really want to start coaching people and helping people with either out of the eating disorders or with relapse prevention work, is back. It was just before I started London Real Care, so it must have been back in last spring. I was at my dad's house in London, which I'd lived, we'd lived there, it's a family house for 40 years. And I found this diary that I'd written, like when I was in my early 20s, and I read it. And it was all about, the time that I was, suffering from eating disorder. I just remember, oh my God, that was hellish. And I'd forgotten how bad it was. I'd forgotten how utterly, utterly miserable and hellish my life was. And it needn't have been. It was just because of the eating disorder. And so I just thought, oh my goodness, this is just,
at the same time, the situation for you is being a bless, because if you didn't have this situation for you, you would now be able to help other people. And that we come to this world to help other people, and sometimes we don't understand
Absolutely.
why God give us things, and then there are the tools for your future, and your future, here it is.
Absolutely. And that's what I mean by alchemizing it. And I just think if I can help people, because I've got the understanding of not only having trained as a psychotherapist and specialising in eating disorders and working as a cacaoista and a shamanic practitioner, all of this comes in. It's all, it's all interwoven into the way that I look at eating disorders. And using the cacao, it's the Jax perspective.
Jax, you take cacao every day?
I think everything in moderation.
Right.
I'm in everything in moderation. And I can go through periods of taking it every day. And then I'll just think, okay, too much of a good thing. I'm gonna give it a rest. And have maybe nettle tea, which is another one of my favourite morning drinks. Or I might treat myself to a coffee. But I like to tease myself with the cacao because I love it so much. I absolutely love it, and I just think, you just have it every day. And I also feel that there's something about that it's an instinctual thing. It's a gut feeling of like, I don't want to have the same food necessarily, and it is a food, every single day. No. I don't think that's good for us.
No.
Another great thing about cacao is that our gut bacteria absolutely love it, and that's something that really suffers in eating disorders, because we're not getting the right range of nutrition, or we're purging, or we're using. I mean, I never did, but I know a lot of people do, using laxatives, so that messes up the gut bacteria completely. Cacao really, really feeds the healthy gut bacteria, and the gut bacteria have an enormous, it's only just being recognised now by scientists, an enormous effect on our brain health, on our mental health, on our whole body health, is basically run by our gut bacteria. And gut bacteria love cacao. So that's yet another of the gazillions of reasons why cacao is just, so wonderful, and why I really want to sort of, have that as part of my eating disorders.
Jax, can you repeat, so how many ounces that you put in your water in the morning for the cacao?
So let me see. And so how many ounces? I would say about an ounce.
An
so
ounce.
20, 25 grams. And I'll be, I can just do it by, the cacao speaks to you. So I can just be chopping off, off the block. Use a nice wooden chopping board and a nice thick bladed knife, because sometimes the cacao can be, quite solid to chop up. And I'll be shaving bits off. And the cacao will just say to me, okay, that's how much you're having today. And it will be anything from 20 to 30 grams. Or if I'm doing a shamanic ceremony, then I will, have 42 grams, which is the, the shamanic dose. But, one shouldn't have 42 grams on a really regular basis. So it's too heavy on the adrenals. It's just too much. It's quite stimulating. But 20 grams, 25 grams, absolutely fine. Or you can chop it up if you want to have it, not cooked into a chocolate drink. You can chop it up and you can make your green smoothie or fruit smoothie or whatever it is, and just chuck it in, and it's chocolate chips in your smoothie. It's
delicious. It's delicious.
Really nice. Yes, crunch up those little bits of chocolate. It's lovely.
I love a smoothie.
So it's time to wrap it up.
It's been an amazing conversation. Before we close, I just want to say one thing, or actually rather ask one last question. And for eating disorders, they present the same way in men as they do in women, right?
They kind of do. There are different, a lot of men do suffer from eating disorders. I would say that a difference is that men and I don't want to make a stereotype or a generalization, but I'm just about to do that actually. Men are more likely to, and this also kind of like is connected with body dysmorphia. Men are more likely to one aspect of the bulimia is working out, so they're more likely to get into that body image of, I need to have muscles, I need to go to the gym all the time. I would say that's one of the, I stand to be corrected on this, but I'd say that was one of the differences, that men are more likely to be sort of like working out and overcompensating for eating in that way, rather than doing the laxatives
because in men they don't have. We love men the way they are. Fat, small, tall, long, whatever. We like them and we accept them. And they are 50, 60, 70, 80, and they be with women 30, 40, women don't care. So they don't have that problem that we have. Yeah. They can have a big belly like that.
In the straight community, but in the LGBTQ community, men work out. They have different representation of what's beautiful for them within their community. So it's different. I'm just curious because I knew someone who didn't eat and he just stopped eating and he got really skinny, and everyone was really concerned about his weight and everything like that. So and then he sort of left school. So and then I've also known several other guys over the years who were more like you were saying, Jax, that were like very concerned about how much body fat they had, and they were constantly working out and doing everything to minimize their body fat, and it can be a slippery slope where you can slide into and not realizing that you're actually having a disorder, but you're a male, because men don't talk about it as much.
Exactly.
It's very hidden. It's very hidden, and it's like, again, it almost feels like it's more shame based for men, because it's almost like, it's something that happens to women, and no, it isn't. It's something that happens to men as well, and it can come in exactly, that can have exactly the same form with the binging and the being sick. And I wanted to type in, I don't see where I can type in the chat. If you want to get in touch with me, go to bristolcacaoceremonies.com. Bristol Cacao Ceremonies, all one word. I'm sorry, I could have sent you that link earlier. But there I have a contact me, and it's much better to write me an email, because you can write like, you know, then you can write private email. I don't really, you know, on social media, it doesn't really feel private, and yeah.
But people can't, if they see the show today, if they want to contact you, they can contact you to Instagram and put that you hear about, you know, in hot topics, so you already know that's a serious person that wants to contact you.
Yeah.
Right,
yeah.
exactly. And through your website. And one final question before we close the show. So when you have an eating disorder, or if someone is out there that has someone that they love, that they're concerned about, what is something that they can do to help them get onto the path of recovery?
It's a really good question.
Beautiful question.
It's also a tricky question, because it can be a really touchy subject. If someone feels like someone is trying to force them or trying to interfere, that can just feed into the whole system of like, I can remember when my parents were trying to help me, and it's just like I just wasn't receiving it, because I felt like they were judging me and criticizing me and forcing me, and they got quite belligerent about it. But I think one of the kindest, most compassionate questions is like, how can I help? Do you want my help? And how can I give that to you? And obviously, if it's a young child, if it's a teenager, if that's someone that's still very much in sort of parental care, it's a really difficult. And it's like, and you know, if it's reached a situation where you know, the eating disorder is actually sort of, you know, life-threatening or health-threatening, really seriously health-threatening, and it's a youngster, then it's like finding a therapist to work with. And unfortunately, you know, it's difficult. We live in difficult times. It's difficult to meet people face to face, but to check out, you know, what the facilities are in your area of the therapists that you might be able to go and see, that you may be able to talk to, find out what their approach is, find out if there are any treatments, you know, in the house, you know, treatment centres that someone could go along to. But it's be gentle, be compassionate, try not to be judgmental, try to sort of hand as much of the responsibility and as much sovereignty as you can over to the person that's suffering, and just saying, well, you know, I can see that you're suffering here. You know,
using your four agreements, the whole entire time.
Absolutely. That's nice to bring it back to the four agreements. Sorry, these earbuds always fall out of my ears. That's why I'm
Wow.
So that's beautiful. Compassion, non-judgment, and perhaps if they're not ready for help at that time, just letting them know that you're there when they are ready for it,
that's
and
what
not
I mean.
judging them if they're not ready for it.
That's what I mean. It's just gentleness, because you know, by trying to push that on them, potentially making it worse, because it just makes that overwhelm seem worse. And some people just, like, particularly with suffering from anorexia, it's terrifying for them to think about, I'm going to have to go into treatment. I'm going to have to do the exact thing that I don't want to do, which is eat and put on weight. And that can feel really, really terrifying for someone that's suffering from anorexia. And plus the fact that they don't know necessarily what they look like. They can't see what they actually look like in the mirror for what it is. They see themselves as bigger. I didn't realise what I looked like when I was anorexic. There was one split second when I come out of the shower, and I just took and didn't really look at myself in the mirror, but came out of the shower wrapped in a towel, getting dressed, and I caught sight of myself in the mirror as I actually was. Not what the anorexia saw, but what I actually was. And I was just horrified. Ugh, I looked away. I was just like absolutely horrified with what I saw. Just like, ugh. But the rest of the time, I couldn't see myself. I couldn't see it. So I just, people were kind of like, oh my God, what's the matter with you? And I just couldn't see it for myself. So it's like, yeah, it is. So gentleness, that's what I would say. Gentleness and loving kindness and compassion to approach the person that, that you're offering help to. But please don't leave it. If you can see it and you've got a loved one and you can see it, please don't just assume that it will, or push it under the carpet, or assume that it will go away of its own accord.
Wow, this was a beautiful topic today. I really, really like it because I know a lot of people are suffering right now in some way or another. And we always bring people, special people like you, that helping transform the world. And I think the eating disorders is one of the very important topics that we should talk more about it. Because we think that we have all figured out, and we don't have nothing figured out yet. We just are in the exploring time of our lives. But thank you to be here and express yourself and share your story. Wow. That I know a lot of people out there will recognize you, and I love this work that you do in helping other people through your experience of life. Thank you so much.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you for being such a beautiful soul, Jax. It is always a pleasure to connect with your energy. The work that you're doing is infinitely important because so many people are suffering and they may be at various stages of awareness. So maybe if this episode helps one person, then we've done our job.
Yeah, even if just one person listens to one thing and gets an aha moment, then that's what it's about. That's what it's about for me.
And so we'll have you back because I know you have another topic, and it's about the first 1,000 days of a child's life and the importance
prenatal
of that.
psychology
and
that.
Oh my God!
So we definitely want to have you back, perhaps in March. So stay tuned for that, and thank you again for coming. We love you so much. Thank you.
Oh,
thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Wow, that was awesome topic today.
Yeah, I knew you would appreciate that, my love.
Yeah, what is like 1,000 days in a child and a baby born? The first 1,000 days?
The importance of the first 1,000 days on a newborn baby psychologically can impact the rest of its life.
Oh my God!
Really interesting topic, and I can't wait to do it. We're going to do a whole series on children and birthing and creating happy babies and happy lives and children.
You know, Kia, I would love to have that knowledge when I have my daughter. Oh my God, I would be like expecting my baby and having a calendar with 1,000 days and start writing one by one and see where I fucked up with the kid, so to correct it so the kid doesn't have traumas.
Right? Can you imagine that? And it all starts with an amazing couple that I know. Shout out to Mags and Keith. They have a great podcast in both French and English, and it's called Authentic Birth. So if you want to check that out, if you know is pregnant, they're going to be coming in March as our guests, and they're going to be teaching us how to create happy babies, coupled with Jax coming back to teach us how to make the first 1,000 days of your baby's life so good that it sets them up for a whole life of having better experiences and better self-worth.
I'm gonna send that episode to my daughter because any time she can have a baby, and that baby I wanna see 1,000 days and see what happened.
So anyway, this was a very big episode. It was actually a special. And
very special.
To bring that to everyone and do a little bit longer of a show to get all the information out so that we can help people, because so many people are suffering with eating disorders and they have no idea. Right? So that's what it was all about. So thank you for sharing an hour and 48 minutes of your life with us.
Yeah.
We'll get more into the 4 agreements another day as well. And we have a lot of really amazing episodes coming up for you this year in 2021. So stick with us. We appreciate you. If you are watching on Facebook, follow our page, share this episode, like it, drop us a comment, all of that good stuff. Thank you, thank you, thank you for all the people who are sending us love in our direct messages. Again, PSA, no dick pics. Thank you. I will tell you, if you send me one, some feedback on it you may not like. So, and then I will block you. So, that being said, no dick pics. Thank you very much. But all of you who have helped me pick out my new piece of art, thank you for your feedback. Thank you for the love. Follow us on Instagram at Gloria Gold 1111 and at Creativity, where I drop knowledge, success strategies, tips, positivity, all that good stuff. And you have to watch Gloria's stories because they're everything. They're everything. Okay? And by the way, no tea, no shade on anyone who wants to enhance their body. It's your body. We just want you to be healthy mentally and emotionally when you make those choices to do a procedure or not to do a procedure, and to love yourself anyway. So no shame, no judgment. We're just sharing our perspectives on that. You don't have to agree, and if you don't like it, you can always click off. So that being said, I am joined by the most incredible, vivacious, loving, and charming soul ever.
Gloria Goldberg. Oh my God, you always give me so beautiful, introduction and finalizing this show in a beautiful way. So I'm Gloria Goldberg, the founder of the podcast Unbreakable Life with Glory, where I talk about depression, anxiety, and PTSD in a holistic way, a natural way to always make you feel better, and also the host and the founder of the bilingual show, The Gloria, where I talk about depression, anxiety, PTSD, and it's every Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. One is in Spanish, one is in English. So if you spoke both language, you can be there. If you speak Spanish, you can also be there, so you can learn Spanish. English, well, whatever. You understand that. And by the way, before we close the show about the subject about eating disorders, I want to say this. Especially that I'm coming from a country that we are women, we are more a stereotype of being in some way. I know there's a lot of women out there, beautiful, young, beautiful, that they don't need anything in their bodies, in their face. And I would like to give this message that I'm a 48-year-old woman, that I'm not planning to do any surgery, and I don't have no surgeries, and I will I will embrace my oldness in whatever life God is going to give me. And for you that you have 18, 19, 20, 25, 30, 35, even 40, sometimes you don't need to do anything because you're already beautiful the way you are. If you have 18, you don't need to put Botox. If you have 25, you don't need to put Botox. If you have 30, you don't need to put Botox and anything like that. So that is my message to you. You do whatever you want, but my message as an older woman, I would like you to consider what you do for your body, because that will reflect in the future life for you. So that's it. Thank you so much to watch Hot Topics today, and see you tomorrow night at 9 p.m. Eastern Time, and here with my beautiful co-host Kia Baker, and let's say goodbye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye-bye.